Alrighty guys, I'm sorry I'm not able to be there today. However, we're going to go ahead and learn our lesson over coordinate plane, and then I promise when I come back tomorrow, I will go ahead and we'll have a fun activity, kind of getting some time to practice using coordinate plane. But let's go ahead and learn the basics of this lovely 4-quadrant figure. Now, what you're going to do with your foldable, go ahead and fold each corner to the middle. Take the right side, fold it towards the middle. Now if you kind of press down on your papers, for example, you can kind of sort of see where that middle darkened line is. Kind of draw a line so that way it splits it into 2 even parts. So just kind of press down on your paper and you'll get your 4 little windows like that. Now, each one represents a quadrant, or one of the places that we're going to be graphing. Okay, so we're going to be exploring that and seeing how that looks like today. Okay, so first of all, let's look at this. Most of us know this first quadrant up here in this corner. This is quadrant number 1. So we use the letter I to represent 1. You know that means 1. So most of us have used this back in elementary school or have seen it in one way or another. I is a Roman numeral. So Roman numerals are things that, quadrants are labeled using Roman numerals. So this is quadrant 1. I just represents 1 using Roman numerals. Now, when we look at this coordinate plane, there are 2 axes. We have a horizontal axis and a vertical axis. Our horizontal axis that we have over here is our x-axis. Our vertical axis that we have is our y-axis. Now when we look at our coordinate plane, we have these 2 axes and they cross and they meet in the middle. We'll talk about what that there's a certain word for this middle section, and we'll talk and look at that too. But now let's look at it. If I look at just at my x-axis for a minute, it's kind of like we have a number line. So when I have kind of something like a number line, we want to make sure we count and number it off in the correct order. Well, 0 is going to be right here in the middle. 0 is kind of that cornerstone. We see everything that's there. 0 is going to be right there in the middle. Now, what I decide to count by, I can count by 1s, 2s, 5s, 10s, 20s, it doesn't matter. But that decision that I make, what I want to count by, is known as the scale. Okay? Scale is the intervals that are on the graph. Intervals that are on the graph. So for this case, I'm going to go ahead and count by 1s. Right? So I start in the middle at 0. And I'm just going to count 1s all the way through. And then if I'm going too fast, your teacher can always pause it. Kind of how we're going through it. So if I go to the right 1 space, that's a positive 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And one thing I want to point out, notice how I'm numbering my numbers on the number line. Notice I'm putting the number on the line. This line is 1. This line is 2. This line is 3, so on and so on. Do not put it in the spaces. When you put it in the spaces, that's when, it makes things a lot more confusing than it needs to be. Right? But we just put the number in the spaces. We put the line on we put the number on the lines. Do not put it in the spaces. Okay. Now if I go above 0 means that it's still positive. So here I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. I'll talk a little bit that way you all can, write. Now notice I'm counting by 1s. Again, I don't have the number in the spaces in between. I put the number on the line. When I put the number on the line, that helps me know that this line is 1. This line is 2, this line is 3, so on and so on. Now, in order to find a spot on my coordinate plane, we need some type of direction. For example, if you have an address for your home, that's telling me exactly where I can find your house. That number on your house, the name of the street, zip code, everything, that helps me find where your house is. However, on a coordinate plane, we don't have time for the whole address and street number and things like that. Right? But instead, we use a system where it's parentheses and two numbers. We usually have our x and our y coordinate, or our x value and our y value. Together, we use these and make an ordered pair. We make an ordered pair. So this x coordinate and y coordinate that we get will tell us exactly where to go on my coordinate plane. It helps me find my points a lot easier, and it makes it easier to find where they are and how to graph them. You can't really graph a point on your coordinate grid if you don't have that ordered pair. Now, just like an alphabet, x comes before y. So we go to our x coordinate first and our y coordinate second. You kind of want to make a note of that. X coordinate first, y coordinate second. And that kind of matches up with our coordinate plane. I have an x-axis and a y-axis. So I would go with my x-axis first, then my y-axis. Now, we have these ordered pairs. This is plot these points. Now, if you look at the very bottom, it gives us kind of a three-step process to kind of sort of solve or know how to graph. It says to graph, first thing we do is we start at the origin. I'll talk about what the origin is and where that is on our graph. Some of you already know. But we'll start at the origin. Then we move right or left. Oh, I'm sorry, or, it doesn't matter. Right or left, left or right. And that's depending on where my number is. For example, we have our positive numbers here, and we'll talk about how we have our negative numbers on the left side. So if our x is a positive number, we're going to go to the right. Then we move either up or down. And again, that depends whether our number is a positive or negative. So you either move up if it's positive or down if it's negative. Okay. So, let's focus back on quadrant 1. Now, going to quadrant 1, all we're going to do is plot these points. So, each of these are separated as the x and y value. So, for example, for point A, my x is y and my y is 8. X is 9, y is 8. So we start at the origin. Origin is the center point right here. Now I'll put the ordered pair for that in just a minute. But let's try this. We start at the origin. My x value is 9. So if you need to use your fingers, use your fingers. Whichever method is going to be easiest for you. If it's 9, we go to the right 9 spaces, or we go to 9. 8, 9. Then it says y is 8. So start at the origin. We move to the right 8 spaces because, my first number is 8. Then it says y is equal to, sorry, 9. So we go 9 spaces to the right. Sorry about that. Then we go 8 spaces up. So we move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And we put a dot. Now notice how I put my point or my dot on my grid. I put at the intersection of 9 and 8. So if I look at where my fingers meet up, they meet up exactly at this point. This is point A, so we write the letter A right next to it. And that's it. That's my plotted point. That's it. Let's try another one. Point B is at 6 and 7. X is 6, Y is 7. So I start at 0, start at the origin, 0, 0. Then for x is equal to 6, we go to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spaces. We go to 6. My y coordinate is 7. So then we go up to 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We put the dot at the intersection and we label it with the letter. Now I want you to try point C by yourself. I'll give you about 30 seconds and then we'll go over. Try C Okay, keep watching the screen. If you're getting stuck, I'll go ahead and work it out. Take maybe 20 more seconds. Try and do point C. X is 1, Y is 9. Read your steps at the bottom. See how you need to work it out. Take a few seconds. Okay. If you graphed it correctly, you start at the origin. For C, we move to 1 on my x-axis, so 1 is over here. We move to 9 on my y-axis, 9 is right here. And we look at where they meet. So I go to 1, then we go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So right there is point C. Right, just like that. Now let's try with the decimal, 2.5 and 5. It's not a big deal, right? We still treat it the same way. On my x-axis, we go to 0, and we go 2.5 spaces, so 2.5 is somewhere in between. So we're estimating a little bit, and that's okay. That's my x value. My y value is 5, so at 2.5, we're going to go up to 5. And notice how this point kind of gravitates, or just, it's kind of in between some of the grids. That's okay. 2 and 5/10 for my point D. And we go up to 5. Just like so. And my last one's point E. Point E is at 4, 0. So x is 4, y is 0. So we start at the origin. We go to 4 as my x value, so 1, 2, 3, 4. Then it tells me 0 is my y value. Well, 0 for my y value means move up or down. If you look at the notes on the bottom, it says move up or down 0 spaces. So if I don't move up any or move down any, that means my point stays right here on my number line. Right here on the grid at 4. So point E is right here on the line. Because sometimes we do get points that aren't there, or points that don't have an x value or don't have a y value. So we do the same thing. We start at the origin, go to 4 spaces to the right. It says move up or down 0 spaces, so I don't move anywhere. So I just stay and leave my pencil there. And that's it. That's graphing. Now another way to think about it is like, thinking about when you were growing up as a kid, you used to crawl, then you stand up, right? So that might be an easier way to remember it. So you crawl as a little kid, you crawl across your x-axis, then you stand up and walk as an older kid. So in that case, we move up or down on my y-axis. Okay. Now looking at the origin, if we look at it smack dab with 0 as an x value and 0 as a y value. 0, 0 is the origin. That means it's 0 spaces on my x-axis. It stays there at 0. It's at 0 for my y-axis, so it just stays there smack dab in the middle. Alright, now we're going to go counterclockwise. So normally a clock would go clockwise like this. We're going to go counterclockwise just like that. So we're going to go into our next quadrant. So if you look at our foldable, right, if I closed it, we just finished quadrant number 1. Now I'm going to only use Roman numerals, so you might want to make sure you understand that, see what it means and how it looks like. So that's quadrant 1. Now we're going to move on to quadrant 2. So this is 2. Roman numeral for 2 is 2 eyes kind of stuck together. That's 2. Now notice my y values are positive in the second quadrant. Like here's positive 7, positive 8. But look at my x values. I haven't even labeled them yet. If I think about a number line, if I were going to the left, that wouldn't be positive 1, positive 2, positive 3. No. It'd be negative. So that means this is a negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, and you can go ahead and label the rest of those. Negative 6, negative 7, negative 8, negative 9, negative 10. Now, I know you might not be able to see it very clearly, but that's a negative 1. Notice it's on the line. I'm not putting it in the spaces. Put it on the line. Put it on each interval. Don't put it in between. If you put it in between, you're not going to put your points in the right spot. Okay. Let's practice with graphing. Now, it says plot these points. So point F says negative 5, 8. So negative 5 is my x value, 8 is my y value. So do the same thing. Start at 0. We go to negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we have to go up to 8. Positive 8's over here. So we go up to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We plot our point. That's point F. So here's negative 5, here's negative 8. They meet in the middle, meet where they're supposed to at point F. Letter G, it says x is going to be negative 8 and y is going to be positive 2. Same thing. That means I start here at 0. Step 1, start at the origin. Step 2, move left or right. My first number is negative, so I'll move to the left to negative 8. And after that, we move up 2. Because step 3 says move up or down, so I move up 2. That's positive 8. That's point G. Now you can try the next one on your own. Try point H. Okay, I know some of you still writing. That's okay. Try point H. I'll give you about 20 seconds. Try and plot point H, and then we'll review. Okay. Look for your x value. Look for your y value. Remember, start at the origin. Move left or right. Then move up or down. Alright, start at the origin. My x value is negative 3, so we go to negative 3 on my x values. 6 is my y value, so I move up to 6. Plot our point. This is point H. That's all we're doing. It's kind of like playing Battleship, if you played that before as a kid. All it is using your x and y coordinates. Okay? Then we have J. J is at negative 1.5 and 5. So I start at 0, start at the origin. Move left or right. If the negative, so move left to 1.5. Remember, negative 1/2 is between negative 1 and negative 2. It is not between 0 and negative 1. So we start at 0. We go to negative 1 and 1/2. It's in between. We move up to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we plot our point, J. Right, and that's it for that quadrant. That's quadrant 2. Make sure you're writing down all this information. And if you're missing something, it'll be on Schoology. So if you need to go look it up tonight, rewatch this video, you're more than welcome to. Okay? Alright. Next quadrant. You guessed it, believe it or not, this is quadrant 3. Quadrant 3 is just 3 letter I's, stuck next to each other. Remind yourself, T-H-R-E-E. It's quadrant 3. Now quadrant 3, our x values are negative. That's true. Notice again, we haven't numbered this part. Now we think about it. If it's below 0, what would that be? I heard someone say negative. And if I didn't hear anyone say negative, that's fine. But below 0 means negative. So it would be negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, negative 5, negative 6, negative 7, negative 8, negative 9, negative 10. And I'm just counting by ones. You could have really counted by anything. Either number would work. So negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, and it just keeps going all the way down to negative 10. You can keep going on and counting, but I'm just going to stop at negative 10. Now it's the same routine, right? To graph, let's look at the first one. For k, it's at -1, -3. We start at the origin, 0, 0. We go to -1 on my x-axis, so here's -1. Then I want to go to -3 on my y, so x and y. If you need to label it like this every single time, if you look on my screen, you can label it like that every time, that's fine. So we go to -1, then we go down to -1, -2, -3. So there we have point K. Start at the origin, move left to -1 because it's negative, I move to the left. Then move down to -3 because it's down because it's also negative. For point L, we go to -5, so -1, -2, -3, -4, -5. We go down to -6, -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, -6. That's point L. It's the same routine. Only difference is now it's like a different order, right? Like the first number is negative here versus the other, quadrant 1 with the first number being positive. It's the same thing. Start at the origin, we move left or right, we move up or down. All right, try letter M. After you try letter M, take a few seconds and try that, then we'll review. Remember letter M, look at the x value first, then the y value. After you move according to the x value, then you move according to the y value. Start the origin, move left or right, move up or down. Okay. For the letter M, x value is -4, so we move to the left because it's negative. 1, 2, 3, 4, -4. Then we move down to -1, which is right here. So there we have point M. You can write the letters wherever, as long as you know that's for that point. This letter's for that point, that letter's for that point. Whatever works best for you. And the last one, letter N, -8, -4.5. So with -8 and -4.5, start at the origin. We move on our x-axis to -8. -8's on the left side, so move all the way to -8. Then we move down to -4.5. So we go down to -1, -2, -3, -4, but then we move down 1/2 more spaces. So -8 for my x value, -4 and 1/2 for my y value. Alright. So those 4 points, that'll be it for quadrant 3. Now our last one is quadrant 4. Now don't think it's I, or 4 I's. No, okay, it's a little bit different. Now this one is quadrant 4. Now I can explain why it's IV, right? It's letters I and V next to each other. In Roman numerals, 5 is the letter V. So when the 1 is behind it, that's like 5 minus 1, which is 4. If I put it in front, that's like 5 plus 1. Okay, it's kind of interesting when you look at Roman numerals, their system and everything so many years back. But that's just the method that they have. So quadrant 4, right? Quadrant IV. And now we're good, right? Because we have both axes labeled. My x-axis is labeled with my positive numbers. My y-axis is labeled with my negative numbers. So I'm going to plot these points. Point P is at 9, -3. So x is 9, y is -3. So we start at the origin. We move on our x-axis to 9. So we move to 9. Then we move to -3. We'll move down 1, 2, 3 spaces. That's point P. Point Q is at 2, -8. So x is 2, y is -8. So when I go start my origin, x is at +2, y is at negative 8, so we move down to negative 8. Remember, we start at the origin, move to the right in this case because this first number is positive, move down in this case because the second number is negative. Right here is point Q. Try letter R. Okay, I want you to try it by yourself. Take a few seconds, and then we'll review. Try point R, 3, negative 5. Remember, start at the origin, we move left or right, then we move up or down. Okay, not too bad. If my x coordinate is 3, we move to the right to positive 3. And then my y coordinate was negative 5, so we move down to negative 5. And then meet right here at 3, negative 5. That's point R. Now point S is just like our other ones where we had a fraction or a decimal involved. 9 and negative 7.5. We move on our x-axis to positive 9. Then we move down, because it's negative, to negative 7.5. So we move negative 3, 4, negative 5, negative 6, negative 7. Negative 7 and 1/2, we move halfway down. And it goes right there in between. Point S. So x value is 9, y value is negative 7 and 1/2. And my last one is point T, 0 and negative 6. So x value is 0, y value is 6. So we start at the origin. Second step says to move left or right. If I move left or right 0 spaces, don't move. It says move left or right 0 spaces. If I don't move anywhere, my pencil's going to stay right here at 0. Right? It's stuck there. And nothing's going to happen. But then it says my y value is at negative 6. Well, my y value is at negative 6. Step 3 says to move up or down. So I'm going to move down to negative 6. And notice where my point is. My point is on my y-axis. So if my point lands up on my y-axis, that means the x-axis is 0 and y-axis is a number. In this case, it's negative 6. Now, if you have questions, we're going to continue this tomorrow as well as on the next day. But today, your goal is to practice. Use your foldable. If you're not using your foldable and you're asking, someone questions, it's not going to be helpful to you. Use your foldable. Use the directions on the bottom. Start at the origin. Move left or right. Move up and down. Or down. And make sure you are graphing it correctly. If you mix up the numbers or mix up the orders, your point's completely wrong. So make sure you're using your time. You're going through it. And if you have any questions, bring it tomorrow.